Hi, this is Bill Raymond. Let's create a blog site using Jekyll and GitHub. Before you get started, you're going to need Ruby, Jekyll, and Visual Studio Code installed. I'm doing all my work on a Mac. You could also do this on Windows. Before we create our blog, we first need to set up a repository in GitHub. And I'm just going to call this my blog. Now you could actually create this on your computer, but this is the best practice to create it on GitHub first. I'm actually going to initialize this with a README file, even though we're not really going to need it. And I'll click Create Repository. And I'm doing this README file because it will actually create the master branch. And that way I can come in here to Settings and then scroll down and say that my GitHub Pages source is the master branch. And then I can also scroll back down again and copy this URL. Go back to my blog. Click this little edit button at the top and put the URL here. That way it will make it easy for me to quickly access it as I'm working on my blog. And here I could just edit the README file to just say, this is the repo for my blog site, and save the changes. And the reason for why I'm doing that is because as we get into this, we're going to create other files that will represent our blog. So the README file should just say, hey, this is what's up with this repo. Over here on my local computer, I'm running Visual Studio Code. I'm going to type Command-Shift-P, clone, enter the URL. That's my GitHub URL, the repo. And I'm just going to throw this onto my desktop. Once it's cloned, I'll open it up and we can get started. Now that we've cloned our repo, we're going to go to the Terminal menu and go to New Terminal. Make sure that you're in the my-blog folder or whatever you called your repo. Don't do this anywhere else. You want to make sure that you're in the proper repo. Now, what you're going to do is type Jekyll new dot. And what dot means is we use the current directory that I'm in. So for example, if I were in the root folder, I might do my-blog, but we're already in there. So we do Jekyll new and then dot. Now watch what happens when I press the return key. It's going to say there's a conflict because the site is empty. Is not empty rather. And you can see why, because we have this README file up here. So what I need to do is just type that command again. I'm pressing up arrow on my keyboard and I'll do a space and type -- force. So that's Jekyll new dot -- force. And what that's just doing is saying to Jekyll, hey, if you happen to have a file you need to overwrite, it's okay. Great. Now along the way, you may be asked to enter your password a few times. It all depends on how you have everything set up on your computer. But what you can see is that Jekyll created a number of different files here right on our computer, and these are what we're going to work with for our blog. Now our blog isn't really configured the way it needs to be for GitHub, and it won't be for a little bit, but let me just show you one important file that you need to know about. That's this gemfile here. And you'll see there's an instruction that says to type bundle exec Jekyll serve in order to look at your website. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to come down here to the terminal. I'll clear the screen and I'll type bundle exec Jekyll serve. And I'll press enter. And you can see I have a URL. So I'm going to just go ahead and command click on that to open the URL. And you can see there it is. Welcome to Jekyll. And this is the very first blog post. So if I click on this, you can say that you'll find this post in your posts directory. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. I'm going to go to the posts directory, and there's that same file that we just looked at. You can see it has a little header information here that defines this as a blog, tells us the date, the title to display in the browser. And then this is all that information we just looked at. It says you'll find this post in your post directory. That's what we just read earlier in the browser. So let me just make a change here. Change. And I'm going to save the file. You can see that Jekyll actually rebuilt it. So it happened pretty quickly. You can see this word generating, and it rebuilt it. And if I tab over here to my browser, you'll notice that that change is not here. I have to press refresh, I have to reload, and there's the word change. Okay, so that's my modification to the file. So let me show you one other way that you can serve this up so you can kind of manage your website a little bit more in an interactive way. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I have the Visual Studio Code product on my left, and I've got Chrome open on my right-hand side. First, I'm going to go to the terminal area in Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to type Control-C on my keyboard. Then I'm just going to clear this screen. The next thing I want to do is close down this tab that has my browser page open. Even though it's going to point to the same URL, for some reason when we do what we're about to do, we need to reopen the tab. So I'm just going to close that. Then I'm going to come over here into Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to type that same command again, which is bundle exec Jekyll serve, and then I'm going to do a new thing here. I'm going to do a space and type -- live reload, and I'll just go ahead and press enter. Next, I'll command click on this, and I'll open up the blog post. You can see this says change and this says change. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that word change. So it goes back to the original way it was designed. And I'm going to save this by pressing Control-S on Visual Studio Code. What you really want to do is pay attention over here to the right. So I'm going to press save, and there, the change word is gone. So you can change almost anything in a Jekyll site and now see it live happening while you're working on it. And that's what we're going to be using when we're working with this Jekyll site locally. Now what I'm going to point out is this building that's happening here. This is what GitHub does for you automatically. So when you post a new blog post, for example, on your site, and it shows up on your GitHub page, it's actually done the equivalent of rebuilding the Jekyll site, or at least the changes that you made. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Control-C in this terminal window and clear this area. I'm even going to close it down for right now, and I'll just bring Visual Studio Code back to the foreground again. All right, now here's what we're going to do. We want to take a look at a few things. First of all, we want to take a look at this config.yaml file. This is a file, this is actually one of the few files that you cannot change while you're doing a live reload. But you can see that it actually has some settings configured here. You can see there's a title. That's that You're Awesome title that displayed earlier. Your email address, your Twitter username. And this is stuff that gets displayed in a template that we have set up. And that template, or rather theme, is called Minima. And this is what Jekyll ships with. It's a very simple site that we just looked at with our browser, and it's pretty nicely laid out so that it works in both large screens, small screens. So it's basically what we call a responsive theme. We'll get into that in another video. Now, over here on the left-hand side, you'll find this file called the gemfile. And we talked about that earlier because we saw that bundle exec Jekyll serve. Now, down here, you'll notice that it says, if you want to use GitHub Pages, remove the gem Jekyll above and uncomment the line below. Now, I'm going to be honest. I have not done this in a few of my tests, and I have done it in a few of my tests, and I've seen no difference. But because the instructions tell me to, that's what I'm going to do. So here's this gem Jekyll 4.0, and I'm going to do hashtag in front of that and comment it out. And then I'm going to come over here to this gem GitHub Pages and uncomment that. Now, I'm thinking the reason for why we're doing this is because this is saying, hey, use this version of Jekyll, that code that was originally uncommented, and instead use GitHub Pages, because GitHub Pages doesn't support everything that Jekyll supports. So I think what this is doing is saying, limit the functionality to just what GitHub provides. I'm not really sure, but that's what I'm guessing. Now, the next thing we need to do is first make sure you save the gem file. I make a mistake not doing that all the time. And you can see it says to upgrade, run bundle update GitHub-pages. So I'll copy that into the clipboard. I'll go to the terminal window, and I'm going to paste that in and press return. And you'll see it says could not find gem GitHub pages. Well, I think there's a step that you need to do beforehand, which is to type bundle install, and then you can see you'll get an error message. It's a pretty lengthy error message, but it's saying here that running bundle update will rebuild your snapshot. So I'll just go ahead and type bundle update. There. You can see bundle updated, and it also says using GitHub Pages. So I think we're all good now. And if I type bundle install again, you can see I'm not going to get that error message. So I think we're all good at this point. Again, I'm not a Ruby developer, and I'm still learning Jekyll. So I'm not quite sure what all of that meant, but what I can tell you is this is what got me going. Okay, so what we've done so far is we created a GitHub repo and cloned it down to our computer. We went ahead and created the website, and now we need to get it up onto GitHub after we configured a few things in the gem file. Now there's something I'm going to point out here. Remember back in the second video that I created, we created a README file, and that actually displays as the index. But remember that index.html and index.md take priority over this. So this index file here is what's going to display first. Now, if you look over here, it doesn't look like a whole lot, but that's for another video when we get into Jekyll themes and layouts. Now, what you should be aware of is that when we get this up onto GitHub, the index.markdown file will display because that takes priority over the readme.md file. Now, also in my video, I mentioned that this index.md is what displays first. Well, it turns out you can type index.md or index.markdown, and that's what Jekyll created for us. So it's totally fine. MD and Markdown are basically the same thing. So what I'm going to do is a Command-Shift-P and commit all of this. So I'll just type commit, and I'll say created Jekyll site, press enter. And then I'll do Command-Shift-P again and do a git sync. And we'll head back over to GitHub to take a look at everything. Now do keep in mind that the changes that you synchronized up to GitHub always have to be built every time. So it might take a little bit for the first build. If you did what I did, it probably takes about 5 to 15 minutes at most. So if I come back over here to my blog, you can see here are all the files that we synchronized up to GitHub. And if I come to the URL, I'll open that in a new tab. And there we go. There's that You're Awesome title. But what's going on here? This does not look like what we set up on our computer. So this is a little odd. So what we're going to do is go back into Visual Studio Code to fix this problem. Before we go there, I'm just going to right-click on this URL and copy it to my clipboard because I'm going to need that. Now remember earlier in the video, we looked at this config.yml or YAML file and we didn't really do much with it. This time we are going to make a change. And rather than changing the site details like the title and the email, what we want to focus on is this base URL and URL. And this is important here. So actually base URL is the important thing you need to fill out. I'm just going to go ahead and paste the URL that I just copied from Chrome into both of these. And for the base URL, I'm going to remove https billraymond.github.io/myblog. I'm just going to have the /myblog with no slash at the end in that little space. And here for the URL, I'm going to keep everything but the /myblog. So now the base URL just says /myblog and the URL says https billraymond.github.io. Now I'm going to go ahead and save the file, commit this, updated config with base URL, updated config with base URL. Can't type. Okay, and now I'll just go ahead and sync that back up to GitHub. Now I'll just go ahead and reload the browser and even just make sure that the post that Jekyll created looks good too. All right, we're all set. Now there's a lot more to setting up Jekyll, but there's a few things that I'm going to show you now in order to just get comfortable with it. And of course, we're going to create a blog post. The first thing that we're going to do is go to the gemfile. And remember, this gives us this handy instruction to type bundle exec Jekyll serve so we can see our work, but it doesn't automatically reload. I'm just going to type space -- live reload in here. This is just a comment, so it doesn't matter that I typed this, but this makes it easier for me later when I want to just copy and paste this when I get back to my blog post. Okay, good. So I'm just going to copy this text and go to a new terminal window and paste it in. Next, I'll control-click on the My Blog link, and there, we can start developing. All right, let's close this gem file and go ahead and save your work if you didn't already. Okay, let's take a look at this posts folder. And you can see that there's a markdown file here, and this is welcome to Jekyll. This is what was created way back when we did a Jekyll new command to create this new Jekyll blog site. And up here at the top, you can see that there's some header information that starts and finishes with 3 dashes. We need that. So we're going to copy that to our clipboard to use with our post. Now, I'm going to come here and create a brand new file, and it has to start in this format. So you do the year, the month, and the day, and then using dashes, you type the name of your post. My first post.md. You don't have to type the word markdown, you can just type MD. Now watch what happens over here on the right-hand side when I press enter. You can see it's titled My First Post. I haven't put anything into this file yet. How did it figure that out? Well, it read this text. Okay, so it looked at my-first-post, it read that, removed the dashes, and capitalized everything. So when I paste this text in here from the original file, I'm going to change this from welcome to Jekyll to my first post, and I'm going to use lowercase letters instead of uppercase letters. I'm going to save the file and watch what happens over here on the right. Now Jekyll is no longer interpreting the title from my post. It's using the title that was in this front matter. Okay, with here with the date, we can see that I pasted in the same date and time as that welcome to Jekyll post. But actually I've done it much later in the day. But I'm just going to go ahead and type 22 and save that. And you'll notice that since this post was created after the welcome to Jekyll, it's the latest version, it got moved up to the top. Now I'll go ahead and write some content. Let's go ahead and click on my first post here, and I'll go ahead and type welcome to my first post and save that. And you'll see the text appears right away. And I can also do something like hashtag, here are things I will be writing about. Did I mention I have a hard time typing when I'm doing videos? Okay, and then I'll just type 1, this, 2, that, 3, the other thing. And I'll just go ahead and save that. And you can see, because we're using Markdown instead of HTML, we get this nice HTML format, but it's really simple for us to write the post. Our new site is using a default placeholder that Jekyll put in place. We'll make a few branding changes. In this video, I'm not going to fully configure Jekyll. However, I am going to change things like this is your awesome title and some of the text here. So let's go ahead and close down all of these files and open up the config.yaml file. Do a Control-C in the terminal window if you're still running the bundle exec, because any changes we make to the config.yml file will not automatically update on the right. It's really one of the few files that you can modify where it won't automatically update. So let's go ahead and take a look here. It says title, your awesome title. Notice that it says your awesome title over here in the browser. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. I'm just going to type in my company name. And I'll also enter my email address. And I'm also, and notice that's where this is right down here on the bottom left. I'm also going to type a description. That description is right here. You can see write an awesome description, write an awesome description. Cool. So I'll just go ahead and change that text. And I'll just type welcome to my blog site or something like that. And also, this template comes with a Twitter and GitHub handle link, so you can go ahead and do that too. So what the heck, I'll just type my Twitter username and I'll type my GitHub username. And now I'll go ahead and save my config.yml file. And now I can go back into the terminal and I can type bundle exec Jekyll serve -- live reload. And I'll do another control click here, command click, and check this out. Now we have the camera mast is at the top instead of your awesome title. It also shows up here. We can take a look at the email address and Twitter and GitHub handles along with that descriptive text. So we did all of that within the config.yml file. Now let's recap what we learned. Basically, what we did was we went over to GitHub and created a repo. It just had a readme.md file in it. We went and cloned this to our local computer, and then we ran that Jekyll new command. Remember, we used that force command because the readme file existed. And then we modified the gemfile and the config file. Remember, with the gemfile, we also needed to make the GitHub change and then run that bundle install and bundle update because this bundle update -GitHub Pages didn't work. We also learned that we can use this bundle exec Jekyll serve -- live reload instead of just bundle exec Jekyll serve. The live reload allows us to see our changes that we make in real time. The config.yml file we modified, but that does not work with live reload. Now, one of the things that we keep talking about is that this is a static site. This here is static. This is an HTML file. I'm looking at the my first post as an example. Now, when we went in here and we worked on this MD file, look at how similar they look. It's really easy to write in Markdown, but the browser doesn't know how to read a Markdown file. So what happened was, remember we see every time we make a change, Jekyll automatically rebuilds our site for us. That's what GitHub will do whenever we update a file there as well. So we don't need to worry about all this live reload, bundle exec nonsense when we're just posting files up to GitHub. But you might be wondering, well, if this is a markdown file, then how is the browser displaying it if I just said that, it can't display markdown? That's where this underscore site folder is. And you can see that there's a Jekyll folder here that has the My First Post. When Jekyll built the site, what it did is it took that markdown file and converted it to HTML. As a matter of fact, if I right-click on this file and choose View Page Source, you'll see they look identical. So you're really not going to change that underscore site folder. That's what Jekyll builds for you. Now, if we come back over here to GitHub, I'm going to just inform you of one thing. I've been creating all of my posts here on Visual Studio Code. As a matter of fact, I still haven't even uploaded this latest blog file up into GitHub. It's a little bit of a pain in the neck to go and create a brand new post in Visual Studio Code, make your changes, save them, commit them, and then sync them up to GitHub. If you'd like, you can just come to GitHub and go to the underscore post folder, create a new file, use that special naming convention, year, month, day, .md, and just say, here is my new post, whatever text you want to put with any markup that you want, and commit that file. So this is how I've kind of been looking at things, is that this is useful to do in Visual Studio Code if you just want to do your blogs right here in Visual Studio Code. But I think what you're probably going to do is get your site set up in Visual Studio Code, and when you're happy with the site, you'll just create your blog posts on GitHub. But that's really your choice. You could do it either way. Thank you for watching this video. If you want more like this, please like, comment, and click the bell to support my channel.